hold that thought. As I expected, there's a lot of fishy things going on in this place.
Fishy? Uh-oh, what have you found?
All in good time. Before we go over our new leads, I want to tell you how a high-altitude escape is performed. First, the magician slots themselves into a magic box in full view of the audience. The box is then suspended high in the air, and a short while later, the base automatically opens. At this point, a dummy will fall out of the box, but it looks real enough to grab the audience's attention, and they start wailing and screaming. Meanwhile, the real magician, who has by now blended into the crowd, waits for a good moment to make their appearance and put on a hysterical performance. Oh no! Is that me? Did I just fall to my death?
Very vivid description. Paimon can really picture it. And then what?
The audience's gaze then turns to the magician, and by the time they realize what's happened, the dummy has vanished, as if everything that just happened was some sort of shared illusion. Of course, that's just how I think the process should work, theoretically speaking. The inventor of this trick never performed it successfully. When the box opened, Caesar was the one who fell out, and not the dummy. He fell right to the ground from the highest point of the opera house. No one could hope to survive that fall, not without a vision at least. And no one else has ever attempted this trick since. My understanding of how it works is just based on what I could gather from his notes and the relevant gadgets here in his workshop.
So Caesar's famous high-altitude escape has never been done, huh? Paimon was about to say how cool it would have been to see it in person, but if it's that dangerous, it's probably for the best that no one else tries to do it. Wait a second. So if a dummy's supposed to drop out of the box, then where does the real magician go? How does he get out?
Glad you asked. That brings us to the secret of said box. This box right here is the one that Caesar constructed himself to use in the performance, and it's not as simple as it looks. Inside, there's a device that only the magician himself would know about. Once the magician's inside and the box is lifted up into the air, the audience's view of the box is fixed at a certain angle. From where they're standing, they have a clear view of the front, sides, and bottom, but the back and the top are now no longer visible. At this point, the magician presses a button inside the box, opening a secret door out of view. He then escapes through this trap door onto the opera house roof, waits for the dummy to fall and distract the audience, and quietly returns to ground level.
That's way simpler than Paimon imagined. Even Paimon could probably do it.
Well, there's a little more to it than that, of course. The hardest part of this trick is controlling the audience's mood and reactions. That takes an exceptional degree of showmanship. There's the falling dummy, the miraculous reappearance, the pompous performing. Maybe the magician would even have themselves tied up before it begins to strengthen the impression that there's no escape. Many days and nights of careful research and painstaking practice would have gone into this, all culminating in a performance just a few minutes long, but one that still manages to transform the shock and grief of a tragic accident to the joy and laughter of a mesmerizing magic trick. Caesar was a highly accomplished magician, but unfortunately, even he didn't manage to pull it off.
So, how did it go so wrong? You said you found some fishy stuff here. Have you figured out what really happened?
I can make a pretty good guess. I looked into the case files. The magic box Caesar was using at the time of his death had the secret button I mentioned positioned on the right-hand side. And sure enough, he always used his right hand as his dominant hand in public.
Okay. Nothing suspicious there.
But here's the strange thing. Most of the devices in this workshop have the mechanism on the left-hand side, including this box right here. because a magician can't afford to have their most basic habits stand out too much. People naturally focus their attention on the most important details of the task or situation at hand. But a magician needs to be able to redirect an audience's attention at will so as to avoid arousing their suspicion. The essence of magic is getting people to believe a lie. If even the truth raises eyebrows, the falsehoods become all the more difficult to mask. And so, Caesar trained himself to use his right hand to align with his audience's expectations. Great magic always requires sacrifices. But in his most stressful and nerve-wracking moments, and when no one was watching, reflex would kick in and he'd use his left hand. That's why he set his gadgets with the mechanism on his left. Exactly. I think that's likely what happened. Caesar would have been under a lot of time pressure during the escape. He'd have had mere seconds to open the hidden compartment, retrieve the dummy, then open the secret door and make a swift escape. But I'm sure he was confident. He would have rehearsed countless times to the point where it was second nature. He'd barely need to think about what he was doing because muscle memory would guide him through. So he opened the compartment, took out the dummy, checked everything was in order, and then went to leave. With his left hand, he reached for the button, and suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. It wasn't there. Much like when you reach for your keys but find your pocket empty, his mind needed a moment to process what was going on. Instinctively, his left hand would keep feeling around for the missing button, maybe for another second or two, until the bottom of the box gave way. With the stakes being as high as they were, just a 2-second delay cost him everything. The authorities would find nothing suspicious and conclude that his death was due to his own error.
When in reality, someone switched the boxes, and they did it to murder him. But how would they be able to make the switch without being noticed? That would be difficult to pull off, no?
It would have to have been someone who knew that he was left-handed, and who could move his props around without arousing suspicion. Someone who was always by his side. Isn't that right, Lorenzo?
You just couldn't let sleeping dogs lie, could you? There's not a lot of people who'd go to all this trouble for some magician who died 10 years ago. I didn't want to have to do this, you know. Silencing you the hard way just creates more problems for me to deal with. But I gave you your chance. I hoped you'd do what's good for you and back off like the lady, but you disappoint me.
You mean Gemma? So you are the one who's been threatening her!
Yes, although however stubborn she might be, she was never much of a liability. But you people, you never even knew him, but for some reason you just wouldn't drop it. Which is why you can't leave this place alive. Take them out, and make it quick.
Do your worst!
You kids are tougher than you look.
Had enough yet, Lorenzo? Your cronies can't help you now. I think it's high time you started talking, and what I'd really like to know is, why did you murder Caesar?
If I had a mora for every time you said that man's name. Of course you idolized Caesar, everyone else did. But I was the real genius magician. Me! He was just an amateur who did cheap tricks for gullible children. I was the one who made magic into the fine art it is today. The aristocrats doffed their hats to me!
So it was jealousy.
Jealousy. Hatred, more like. I hated Caesar. All he cared about was his magic. He lived and breathed it. He poured everything into his street performances and his stupid tours like it was just a hobby to him, never bothering to think about Mora. What sort of fool? But the people loved him, didn't they? Oh, how they looked up to him. No one gave me a second look. All I ever heard was, "Oh, your master's amazing, isn't